The life and sad ending of Bob Seger. Originally a hard-driving rocker in the vein of fellow Michigan garage rockers The Rationales and Mitch Ryder, Bob Seger developed into one of the most popular heartland rockers over the course of the 70s. Combining the driving charge of Ryder's Detroit wheels with Stonesy garage rock and devotion to hard-edged soul and R&B, he crafted a distinctively American sound. Bob Seger was born Robert Clark Seger on May 6, 1945 in Michigan to Stuart Seger, a medical technician, and his wife Charlotte. He has one brother named George. His father loved music, and young Bob grew up listening to his father play various musical instruments. He was a big fan of Elvis Presley and Little Richard. His parents had a troubled marriage, and his father abandoned the family, leaving his wife and kids to fend for themselves when Bob was just 10 years old. Seger began playing music in 1961 as the leader of the Detroit-based trio The Decibels. His future manager, Eddie "Punch" Andrews, was also a member of the band. Moving to Ann Arbor, he played with the Town Criers before he became the keyboardist and vocalist for Doug Brown and the Omens. Billing themselves as the Beach Bums, the band released The Ballad of the Yellow Beret, a parody of the Sgt. Barry Sadler's song, The Ballad of the Green Beret. The single was withdrawn shortly after its release after Sadler threatened a lawsuit. In 1996, Seger released his first solo single, East Side Story, which became a regional hit. Several other local hit singles followed on Cameo Records, including Persecution Smith and Heavy Music, before his label folded. In 1968, he formed the Bob Seger System and signed with Capitol Records, releasing his debut album, Ramblin Gamblin Man, in the spring of that year. The title track became a national hit, climbing to number 17, but the group's follow-up, Noah, stiffed and Seger decided to quit music business in 1969 to attend college. 1 year later, Seger had returned to rock and roll with a new backing band, releasing Mongrel at the end of 1970. For 1971's Brand New Morning, he disbanded his group and recorded a singer-songwriter effort. Following its release, he began performing with the duo Dave Teagarden and Skip Van Winkle Nape, and they provided support on 1972's Smokin' OPs, which was the first release on Palladium Records, a label he formed with Andrews. The album failed to sell, as did Back in 1972, and Seven, and he moved back to Capitol Records for 1975's Beautiful Loser. For the recording of Beautiful Loser, Seger formed the Silver Bullet Band, which consisted of guitarist Drew Abbott, bassist Chris Campbell, keyboardist Robin Robbins, saxophonist Alto Reed, and drummer Charlie Allen Martin. Seger supported Beautiful Loser with an extensive tour with the Silver Bullet Band, and while it didn't make the album a hit, it provided widespread grassroots following across the country. The touring paid off in 1976 when Live Bullet, a double album recorded in Detroit, became a hit, spending over 3 years on the U.S. charts and going gold. The album would eventually go quadruple platinum. The groundswell behind Live Bullet sent Seger's next studio album, Night Moves, into the top 10 early in 1977. Night Moves became a blockbuster, generating the hit singles Night Moves, Main Street, and Rock and Roll Never Forgets. Stranger in Town, released in the summer of 1978, was just as successful, featuring the hits Still the Same, Hollywood Nights and We've Got Tonight, and Old Time Rock and Roll. Stranger in Town confirmed his status as one of America's most popular rockers. Seger's next album, 1980's Against the Wind, became his first number one album, and all of its big hits, Fire Lake, Against the Wind, You'll Accompany Me, were ballads. The live album, Nine Tonight, continued his multi-platinum success in 1981, selling 3 million copies and peaking at number 3. Seger returned with The Distance in 1982. The Distance was the first album since Seven to be recorded with the addition of session musicians, which caused guitarist Abbott to quit the band in frustration. Over the course of the next decade, the membership of the Silver Bullet Band shifted constantly. While The Distance featured Shame on the Moon, his biggest hit single to date, its sales plateaued at 1 million copies, suggesting that his popularity was beginning to level off. Seger also began to drastically reduce his recording and touring schedules. He only released one other album, 1986's Like a Rock, during the 80s. Like a Rock and its supporting tour were both successes, paving the way for Shakedown, a song taken from the 1987 soundtrack to Beverly Hills Cop 2, which became Seger's lone #1 hit. 4 years after its release, he returned with The Fire Inside. Although the album went platinum and reached the top 10, it only appealed to Seger's devoted following, as did 1995's It's a Mystery, which became his first album since Live Bullet to fail to go platinum, leveling off at gold status. A long hiatus followed, where Seger kept his head down and spent time with his family. These quiet years were only interrupted by his 2004 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Finally, in 2006, after an 11-year hiatus, Seger released Face the Promise, his first record since 1975's Beautiful Loser, not to feature the Silver Bullet Band. Although it spawned no big hit singles, Wait For Me made it into the Billboard Adult Contemporary Top 20. Face the Promise performed well, debuting at 4 on the Billboard charts on its way to platinum certification. A couple of archival projects followed. The 2009 compilation Early Seger Volume 1, which balanced previously released cuts with re-recorded old tunes, and the 2011 double-disc set Ultimate Hits, Rock and Roll Never Forgets, which was certified platinum and generated a modest adult contemporary hit cover of Tom Waits' Downtown Train. A new album, titled Ride Out, appeared in October 2014, debuting at number 3 on the Billboard charts. Seger next released I Knew You When, a 2017 album that was dedicated to the recently deceased Glenn Frey. Bob Seger has had 3 marriages. He married Renee Andretti in 1968. The marriage lasted for 1 day short of a year. In 1987, he married actress Annette Sinclair, and this marriage too ended in a divorce after a year. In 1993, he married Juanita Doricott. The couple has 2 children. Bob Seger was in a long-term relationship with Jan Dinsdale from 1972 to 1983. With what happened in that sentiment is enough to make Bob Seger have sad eyes. But that doesn't mean he neglects everything. What he does is really respectful. Bob Seger, 76 years old, is not in the same health as before, hoping that at the present time he can find himself the ideal of living where there is peace of reality.